Here. So today we're on week 3 of a message called Too Good to Miss. And just to kind of highlight what this is really about here, Kyle put the next picture up for you. It's 3 things that you can't afford to miss and how to ensure that you won't. So we've been talking about these really, really important things in life, and we don't want to miss those important things in life. Last week we talked about Jesus. We said, hey, as the number one thing that we don't want you to miss, we don't want you to miss Jesus, right? So that makes sense. You know, and we were, like the whole point of that message is to say that we don't want you to miss Jesus unnecessarily. It's like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Like, hey, because something happened in a church or something happened with church hurt or something happened with a church friend or somebody, because something like that happened, I just don't want anything to do with Jesus. And what happens is we unnecessarily throw Jesus out when really our problem doesn't have anything to do with Jesus. And it has to do with the people that we interact with or the situations or the scenarios or just honestly like the broken world that we live in. And today we're talking about, I think, an even harder topic. But before we get into that, let me just, do a few disclaimers here and let you guys know a few things here. The whole purpose of today is not to cure you or to heal you. The whole purpose of today is to help you live life with lesser regrets. It's to help you carry on and make fewer decisions that are going to create more regret in your life. That's why we do this. That's why when we say we don't want you to miss these things here because they may lead to regret. In fact, if you think back, this is kind of a pointed statement. There's not a lot of people here, so I'm going to be mean this morning, okay? Even though you guys are here. No, I'm not going to be mean at all. In fact, I'm about to butter you up. But in the season of your life, when you encountered your greatest regret, if you had been following the teachings of Jesus, you may have avoided that greatest regret. I'm not saying that if you had been following Jesus as a Christian or as a Christ follower, you would have avoided your season that created your deepest regret, but you would have, even just without believing in Jesus, following those teachings may have helped you to avoid a season where you incurred your greatest regret. And so that's the heart behind this. The heart behind this week, last week, next week, is I just want to minimize the amount of regret that we carry around. Because we carry so much of it. And it's so deep and it sits on us so heavy. So last week we talked about Jesus. This week we're talking all about family. Don't miss family. Last week was don't miss Jesus. This week is don't miss family. Now I want to give a couple of disclaimers to you. Don't get upset with me today. Your toes may get stepped on. It's not intentional. I just want to say up front, I can never understand what you're going through with your family. Never. I can never even relate to what you're going through with your family. I can't understand and I can't relate, and I'm not going to pretend that I can relate and understand to the hardships that you're going through with your family. All I can do is try and learn from those things, but all I can really do is teach what Jesus says. That's all I can do, is teach Jesus. And I'm going to reveal a side of Jesus to you today that I think will help you to see him as a role model on how we deal with our families. So we're going to do that. But before we do, I need to get one obvious thing out of the way that applies to, definitely everyone in this room, because you got up on a cold, rainy day and you came to church this morning. So here's a very obvious statement that applies to everybody in the room here. No one that you are related to is as smart as you, right? Okay, that's supposed to, you're supposed to say, yeah, that's me. Are we awake this morning? Listen, I'm awake. I may have a fever right now, but we're doing, Now, no one that you're related to is as smart as you. No one has your common sense, right? Look at your partner and be like, no one's got your common sense, No one has your common sense. If your family would only take their cues from you, then things would be a lot smoother, right? If your family would only listen to your wisdom, then things would be a lot smoother for you, right? If your family would just understand that even though you may be younger, you're the one to listen to, you're the one to follow, that you have the right ideas, and quite frankly, you're just, the smartest one, then things would be a lot easier for your family. And I'm not saying that you're perfect, okay? Not calling anyone in here perfect, because even you wouldn't say that you're perfect. But I am saying that you're more perfect than the rest of your family, right? Feel that way. You're definitely more perfect than the people that are at home in bed right now, because you're here this morning. So that's supposed to butter you guys up a little bit, let you know that, hey, I'm on your side this morning. I think that you're strong, you're smart, you're wise. Hopefully get you on my side a little bit so that you start, listening to the rest of what I want to say. But as it pertains to family, there's two different types that we're going to look at this morning. Two completely different types. The first type that we want to look at, and we can identify with both, but the first type that we want to look at is we want to look at the ideal type of family. So what this is like the marriage the first marriage that stuck. This is the prayed for, hoped for, dreamed for picture of family that you had when you were young, before life happened, before hurt came in. This is what you pray for. If you've got kids, this is what you pray for them. This is the family here where the cousins love each other. This is the family here where you're excited that your mom-in-law comes over, right? Amen? Yeah. Some of us are. But this is the ideal family. It's the picture that we at one point in our lives maybe strived for. But before you gave yourself away, maybe even before marriage, before you gave yourself away, there was maybe this dream in you that was like, I'm worthy, I'm worth something, I'm worth somebody putting a ring on my finger before I do this with them. Like I have, and then life happens and, that ideal kind of starts to drift away a little bit. But some of us can still reach this ideal picture of what family is. I'll be completely transparent with you this morning about me. I come from an ideal family. My parents are still married. They've been married for, I'm 41, and so they've been married, or 42 or something like that, and they've been married 5 years longer than I've been alive, so they're like 47 years married, if that math stacks up well. So, I come from an ideal family. They're married to each other. They love each other. There was no divorce. There was no alcoholism. My parents did a good job with their finances and with their money. I thought we grew up poor, but we just grew up with a smart dad who, was careful with the way that he spent money. Yes, I came from that. And some of you still have that. And some of you haven't started your families yet. And some of you haven't entered in the world of family hurt. And this ideal picture maybe isn't out of the picture for you yet. And if that's you, it is absolutely worth fighting for. It's absolutely worth praying for and not giving up on. Even if it maybe feels like it was gone for a season. Yes, that ideal may be gone, but don't give up on it altogether. Now, for the rest of us, ideal was something that life came in and shot and murdered and buried, dug up, cremated, and then reburied, right? Like that idea is dead. It is dead. It is gone. Mistakes were made. Bad things were done. Decisions were made. And ideal is dead. It will never come back. The ideal picture of family, it's now unattainable. And for those of us, that would be real. See, there's ideal and then there's real. And somewhere along the way, everyone starts with this ideal picture, but then everyone ends up living in what is real. And oftentimes what's real is it hurts. It's painful. Family has the ability to be the most joyful thing you've ever experienced. Hearing about my 4-year-old who wants to go home and play in the mud. Full joy, especially because I feel called to stay here after church and pray for every single one of you by name. So I won't be home for that, but I'm full of joy that is. Now, our family can bring us pure joy, it can bring us delight, it can bring us happiness, but the other thing that it can bring is a pain that's unequivocal from anywhere else. That's where the deepest hurts can come from. That's where the most sorrow that we carry can come from. That's where we hope that our parents would take care of us, but they didn't. They didn't keep us safe like we hoped that they would keep us safe. We didn't grow up feeling like life was safe. We didn't grow into relationships where partners respected us and took care of us. But Ideal is gone and we now have this real thing. And I'm not saying that it's your fault or it's another person's fault. This is not the blame game here this morning. It's not. You know, it may be your fault. It may not be your fault. It may just be that you woke up one day and life had happened. And as life has happened, you realize that like, oh, Sherbert, I don't know if I could ever get back to this. And maybe I'm just going to have to settle for this. But whoever's fault that it is, if you can identify with this, then you can probably relate to the fact that life just isn't what you assumed that it would be. It's just not what you assumed that it would be. You know, if we look back into family here, okay, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, there's a joke coming up. So since you guys are sleepy and cold, get warmed up for it here. All right, so life is just not what you assumed it would be. Okay, did you know that in the Bible there are no good pictures of family? There's no good models of family. Did you know that? If you look into the Old Testament, this is like funny. This is funny stuff. Cain and Abel. All right. Cain was okay. So let's go back to Adam and Eve. The first family introduced sin permanently into the world. All right. So that's a good start. Yeah. First family. Their son committed the first murder. All right. Another good start there. Okay. We could jump forward. We could go to. Let's see here. Let's go ahead to Noah. You know, Noah, I think, got naked and drunk in front of his kids after he got off the ark. You know, that seems like something a holy guy would do. Joseph, if you know about Joseph, coat of many colors, Joseph was sold into slavery by his family. They pretended that he was dead and, sold him off into Egypt. Like that. Abraham's married to Sarah is fine, That's in Genesis 47:3. If you look that verse up, it says, Sarah is fine. All right? It's not there. Don't look that up. But Abraham's married to her, and she is a good-looking woman. And so they go into Egypt, and guess what Abraham does in Egypt? He's like, my wife, this guy's a real beta male here, all right? My wife is so good-looking that if Pharaoh sees that I'm with her, he's just going to murder me. And so Pharaoh, and he comes up, and he sees Sarah, and she is beautiful. She's striking, It's like if Casey stood up, that'd be her right there. Ka-ching, Not even in the notes. So anyway, so Sarah comes in. And so what Abraham does is Abraham says, when he meets Pharaoh, he's like, oh, she's my sister. And then Pharaoh's like, okay, fantastic, And so he takes Sarah into his harem. She becomes, one of his women there. And, long story short, she doesn't end up staying there because, God curses the household, and Pharaoh's like, what's going on here? He confronts Abraham and he's like, why have you brought sin into my house, and all that stuff. But that's not a great picture of family, all right? So if you come from a dysfunctional family, or you are that dysfunctional family, then, hey, congratulations, everybody, because you have a biblical family. Ha, 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 joke, laugh, yeah. Everybody's got energy today. It's amazing. So you can go home today and you can tell everybody, I'm a biblical family. Our messed up family is a biblical family. And it was messed up, and yours is messed up. But then along came Jesus of Nazareth. And when Jesus came, Jesus changed the whole paradigm of how people thought about people and relationships. When Jesus came along, the first thing he did is he elevated the position of women and the value of women in society. If you're a women's rightser or whatever, and you value that, which we as a church, it's like you have to as a church because Jesus taught it. Jesus was one of the first ones to stand for your rights and to stand for your value and to stand for your worth. And Jesus elevated the value of women. Jesus also elevated the value of children in society. Jesus also held husbands, and this stirred the pot quite a bit. He held husbands to a higher standard. And that higher standard was something that was culturally like groundbreaking and like that was not a thing that was okay, but Jesus held them to a higher standard. Jesus also said, forgive everyone. Jesus also said, love everyone. Jesus came into this world, this kind of like messed up world, and he changed the whole paradigm about it. If we think back to that stuff about being, an ideal picture of family and then a real picture of family, Jesus, he was also able to kind of like mix the two of those, ideal and real. Let me explain this to you right here. So Jesus, he taught and he pointed to an ideal. So all of his teachings and everything that he taught, he was pointing and teaching to what was an ideal. So an ideal picture of family, an ideal picture of marriage, an ideal picture of husbandry, an ideal picture of someone, asking God for forgiveness. But there was this ideal, and we could call this ideal like truth. All right, this is the truth that Jesus taught to and pointed to. But the great thing about Jesus is that he never shied away from what was real. He never shied away. You know what this means for you and your dysfunctional mess that you live with and carry around all the time and all day long? This means that there is Jesus who came onto the scene, and he modeled and he taught and he put in front of us this ideal of what life could be and what life can be. And he always pointed people to that, but he never overlooked and forgot about what was really happening in you and what's really happening in our lived experiences. See, Jesus, when we see people that value an ideal, we can tend to call those people idealistic. Jesus was not idealistic. I don't know if you know what an idealistic person is, but it's somebody that takes an ideal and holds it and puts it up on a pedestal in a way that is like, that is the gold standard, that is the God, that is everything. But you have this ideal, and that's what you want to hold everybody to. But Jesus was not this way at all. In fact, this is so cool, the way Jesus acted here. So Jesus actually hated idealistic people. He reserved his harshest criticism for religious leaders that held people to an idealistic standard that they had no hope of living up to. So Jesus looked at idealistic leaders, the Pharisees. Let's take those Pharisees. They held people to this idealistic standard, which would be like all 457 of their laws, and say like, you have to be perfect. You have to do all of these things. That's why they followed Jesus around and bickered at him when he ate grain on the Sabbath, or when he healed somebody, or he did this or he did that. They're like, you can't do that. It's just like a bunch of just mad, angry people walking around pointing at Jesus. It's because they were obsessed with the idealistic standard. And Jesus hated that. Because what that meant, and think about this in your life here, you've already missed ideal in your family. You've already messed up. The messed up has come and the messed up is gone, and now you're sitting with what is real. And if you think to yourself, well, how can God love me? And how can God forgive me? How can God restore our family? Well, this is exactly how. Because Jesus never put an ideal over you. And he always taught us these ideal, the standard for ideal, but he never forgot that we're real people in real circumstances dealing with a real world. In fact, here's what John says about Jesus. John says that Jesus was full of grace and truth. Full of grace and truth. Let me just pick on churches a little bit. Some churches are very truth forward. Like, you come here and we need to tell you, you need to know how much of a sinner that you are. You're a sinner, you messed up, you need to understand that. That's where your connection with God is in you understanding how much of a sinner you are, because here's the ideal standard that you should be living to here. And then there's churches that are very grace forward. That's like, who cares about anything? We love you no matter what. You killed your brother. That's fine. He probably deserved it. Come on in this morning. You're fine. Happy to be here with you. But Jesus didn't have to sacrifice one for the other. He was full of grace and he was full of truth. And here's how that plays out. He never dumbed down the truth to make people feel better about themselves. And he never turned down the grace because he loved them. Now, so we have to understand this about Christ before we talk about some things about our own family. Because when we understand something about Jesus, it helps us to apply it to our lives. I think part of why we have a hard time applying the Bible is we don't really understand what's going on in the Bible. Or we don't really understand Jesus. So let me tell you a really cool story here. This story is in John chapter 8. And this is an example of Jesus applying the ideal, the real, the full of grace and full of truth, all in the same, person, fully 100% grace and 100% truth. So here's what happens in this story here. Many of you know the story here, but some of you don't. I'll give you a quick recap. So there's a woman, And she is caught in the act. I feel like because there's less people here, I don't have to censor myself, but there's kids in the room. So she's caught in the act of adultery, all right? She gets caught. Now, she is brought out by the Pharisees onto, think about this as like the temple square right here, this carpet here, which is lovely. So on this temple square, this is the most holy place in the temple. It's not just like, it's not off in the corner somewhere. They bring this lady to the holy of holy place up on the temple square. They bring her there and they put her there. Now, what Jesus does is he shows up and sees that there's a woman surrounded by Pharisees. And this woman's been caught in the act of adultery. Who knows where the man is? How do they know she was in the act of adultery if there wasn't also the man there at the same time? But he's not there. I personally think it was one of the Pharisees that, I don't know. So anyway, that's a whole nother sermon. So she's caught. So by law, this woman should be martyred. Or not martyred, that's the wrong word. She should be murdered. That's the right word. She should be stoned to death. So they bring her up to the temple to convict her and to stone her and to kill her. Now this woman, the ideal is long gone. So is her life. Her reputation is long gone. She's drug out into one of the most public places and put right in the center, the holy of holy places, out in the open there. And the Pharisees are standing around her about to throw rocks. That's what being stoned is. They pick up rocks and they hit you until you die. And then they throw you or push you off the side of a hill into a ditch. And that's where you spend eternity. That's it. There's no grave, there's no memory, there's no nothing. So that's her fate. And you know what? Idealistically, she deserved it. Idealistically, she broke the law. She broke the Jewish laws. Idealistically, those men standing around her had every right to stone her and throw her off the hill to kill her. Idealistically, that's it. But then along comes Jesus. And instead, Jesus comes up to him and he says some stuff. And the story is so amazing. You can go on your own and read this story here. But Jesus writes some stuff in the dirt. It's fun to speculate about what he could have written there. And he looks up at the Pharisees and he just says, those of you without sin, be the first to throw the stone. And there's so much power in that, because that meant that they actually couldn't throw the stone, because then they were saying that they were perfect, but only God was perfect. So Jesus, like in one sentence, just nailed them. And then they walked away. And then Jesus looks at this lady. Straightening up, Jesus said to her, "Woman, where are they? Did no one condemn you?" No one condemn you. Idealistically, she should have been condemned. But Jesus steps in. She says, "No one, Lord." And Jesus says to her, "Then I don't condemn you either." Full of truth and full of grace. Right here, the woman experienced the full of grace. In the last part of this verse here, Jesus fills her with truth. He says, "Now, go from now on and sin no more." So what Jesus does is he enters her life with grace and then points her towards the ideal, towards truth. Now, our original idea, it may be dead and it may be gone. But that with Jesus, there's always another step. So if you look at your relationship with your family, if you look at the hurt that you carry, the hurt that you feel, if you look at just the destruction of relationships that are in your family, you look over that, you think, it is so far gone. It's dead. In fact, I'm moved. I'm out of here. And these people, they deserve to just catch on fire one day and nobody put them out. That's the way that we think. But let me just tell you, that's all fine and dandy for some of you, but you may be the one that people are running away from. What if you're the one that hurt somebody? I don't know. Naturally, I think you guys are perfect, great people. Obviously you came to church on a rainy winter day, right? But there's a chance that maybe you've done some hurt, done some things. But there's also a chance for all of us that there is still a next step. Jesus gave her a next step. So this is your question. What is my next step? What's mine? So if you're willing to ask yourself this question, then it's going to open up an opportunity for you to move forward in healing and in restoration. But you got to ask that question. So think about all the pain that you feel, all the hurt that you're carrying in your heart, all the hurt and disappointment that comes with family. Now, it's really hard to think, okay, well, what could be my next step? Because a lot of us have just gotten to where we're coping with it pretty good. And a lot of us have gotten to a place where, you know what, I'm actually fine. I've ignored it for long enough. It's gone away for long enough. You know, I'm coping with it well enough. So let me just leave that alone. Why would I go back and dig that up? Well, why would Jesus go to the woman who was condemned, idealistically condemned to death, and give her another chance? Jesus gave her a chance, and Jesus gives you another chance. You know, Jesus didn't want to die on the cross for you. Ooh, it's like, oh, are we still in church this morning? Jesus did not want to die on the cross for you, and here's why. Because when Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane before he was going to be arrested, you know what he asked God? He said, God, can you let this cup pass from me? I don't want to do it. Because there's no guarantee that he would die for us and we would accept him. There's no guarantee that the effort that he would put forth in creating a bridge for us to be restored back to God would yield any good for us. Because we still had to make the choice. But Jesus didn't make the choice to die for you because of you. He made the choice to die for us because of obedience, and obedience to God. And Jesus said, Lord, let this cup pass from me, if there can be another way. And then he cried tears of blood. He was under so much anguish and so much stress. And then what Jesus did next is he said, Father, not my will, but yours be done. A man took on the weight of sin of eternity and submitted himself to God and was obedient for us. Isn't that amazing? When there was no guarantee that anyone would believe, he did that for us. So there may be no guarantee that there is any restoration available in your relationships that are broken. There may be no guarantee that there's any forgiveness, that there's any healing. There may be no guarantee for any of it. And nothing may never come out of it. But if you're willing to ask the question, what is my next step, that we can learn that there are a couple next things that we can do that are within our power to be able to do it. So Paul writes a couple statements here. So we'll jump into these. And this first statement that Paul is writing, he's talking about those of us that can still kind of obtain like ideal. So maybe you're a newly married couple, or maybe you've been married for a little while and you find yourself like you're drifting, but you're not divorced. All right, you're drifting away, and for some reason, like divorce keeps coming up, you know, and you keep thinking like you spend more time thinking, well, me and not them, or you know, there's just like that the creep. It's like a creep that's happening. The dividing line is kind of starting to form in your relationship there. Well, don't give up yet. And Paul writes these statements here for those of us that can still kind of obtain the ideal family. And so he says in Ephesians 5:2, he says, submit. Don't you love that word at the beginning of a verse? You know, I start my every day with walking into the kitchen and going, Casey, submit. You know, right? Feels good, goes over well, right? No, I've never said that, and there's proof because I'm alive. So, but Paul starts out with submit. So this is for people that are like kind of broken relationally, but they can still achieve ideal. And the first word that he chooses is submit. The next word he chooses is to one another. Submit to one another. And that submit to, Kyle, you can go to the next slide there. Submit to one another. Like that's, okay, submit is hard. And then to one another is hard. It's like, well, God, but don't you understand that this is the person that I'm currently fighting with right now? You want me to submit to that person that I'm like, yeah, this is submit to one another. But here's what makes it a Jesus thing and not a you thing. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. So you're not submitting to one another out of reverence for them. You're not submitting to one another because it's going to produce an outcome. You're not submitting to one another for any other reason than out of reverence for Christ. And what that means, the way you can apply that practically in your life is the woman that's being persecuted by the Pharisees. She's on the ground in the dirt. We know she's in the dirt because Jesus drew in the dirt. She's in the dirt and she's dead. She is dead, 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 dead. She is a dead person walking. And Christ came and saved her. And that is the reverence that we want to submit to each other in. The reverence of the man who came down and died on the cross for us and saved us. And because we've had that grace in our life and we've had that happen in us, then I'm going to show that grace. Out of reverence for what Christ did for me, I'm going to try and submit to the person that I'm in relationship with. And Paul goes on here in the next verse and he writes, this is for wives here. Wives, be subject to your husbands and as a service to the Lord. See, what Paul is doing here is Paul's taking the teachings of Jesus and he's teasing those teachings out. All right? He's teasing the teachings out and applying them to all the different areas of people's lives. So everyone loved this one right here. You know, maybe they didn't really love the submit out of the reverence, to Christ. But, this is where Jesus' teaching upsets a society and it upsets a culture. So Paul's like, okay, submit to each other out of reverence for Christ. And all the people in the room are like, okay, yeah, Jesus is pretty good. I can maybe think about trying to do that a little bit better, and guys are getting a bit antsy. And then Paul's like, hey, wives, be subject to your husbands. And the men are like, I like this Jesus guy, man. He's good, Amen, as a service to the Lord. Now, this is the part that gets left off. This isn't talking about being in an abusive relationship. This isn't talking about assigning authority over you. It's not wives, let your husbands be the authority over you and put yourself under the authority of them right here. This is between you and Jesus, but you're submitting yourself to your husbands. And all the men are like, I love this, And then Paul goes on, he gives a couple other verses talking about it. And then he comes to verse 25. This is the one that shattered society. I can't believe it actually stuck and actually, took on. Husbands. And the guys are like, okay, all right, yeah, I'm listening. Love your wives. Okay. Then Paul says, seek good for her and surround her with a caring and unselfish love. It's like, all right, I can try and ask her how her day was, And just as Christ also loved the church, he gave himself up for her. This is where all the men in the room go, wait, it's not. But Christ died for the church. And Paul's like, yeah, he loved it that much. And it's like, and you should die for your wife. You should give all of yourself for her. You should give all of everything that you are. You should die to yourself every single day. And this is so hard to do. And I'm the biggest hypocrite. But you should give everything that you are, men, to them. And serve them and love them. And die to self and put their needs first. You want to see your wives, strive. You want to see them grow. You want to see them happy, right? You want to see them like stepping into what matters to them and their dreams and whatnot. That's why he says, as Christ also loved the church, he gave himself up for her. Seek the highest good for her and surround her with a caring and unselfish love. You know what marriage should really be? Marriage should be a submission competition. Because when marriage is a submission competition between the two of you, all right, then what that does is that creates an environment where grace can grow, where love can grow, where forgiveness can grow. It creates an environment where joy can come even when everything is a mess. Joy can be there. But it incubates these things. Don't have any love in your marriage? Okay, start with a submission competition. Don't have any love in the relationship that you have with your mother-in-law? That's different. Paul's talking about marriage here. We'll give advice on that later. All right? But what happens is that when we don't compete to submit to each other, when we compete to not submit, we're entering a race to failure. It's the two of you are just competing for failure. You're just gonna and tank. Because you don't care, she doesn't care. You don't care, the partner doesn't care. and everybody's after their own thing, and nobody wants to give an inch or give a centimeter, or nobody wants to help, you are doomed to failure. You know what's amazing about marriage is marriage was designed by God, right? And marriage, therefore, is made to work. But our marriages, a lot of the times, don't work. And why is that? Because we take something that God made for us, even just the submission competition, and we compete against each other. And we let the ideal just die and go, and we don't fight for it. And then we wonder, what's wrong with my relationship? Well, behind closed doors, the two of you are competing for failure because you're competing to not submit to each other. So again, this is for those of you that ideal may still be in the picture. Ideal may still be obtainable, or ideal version 2 or version 3, but there is some version of this that you may still be able to obtain, and you have a relationship with your family where you can still talk and you can still come together and you can work together and you can work on this and you can bring Jesus into this. And Paul is saying, don't compete to submit, don't compete to not submit to each other. Instead, honor each other, submit to each other, compete with each other to submit, love each other. You know, Paul gives us those instructions that come from Jesus. And remember, this is why I chose the story of the woman who was about to be stoned to death. When I say it comes from Jesus, I mean it comes from the man that went down in the dirt with a dead woman. And idealistically, she should have been stoned and murdered and died. And that man got down in the dirt with her and then released her and said, just go and sin no more. He gave her a next step. When ideal was lost, he stepped into her real and he gave her a next step. So that very same Jesus wants us to have that in our lives. Okay, the next one here that we have here is, this is in Romans 12:18 here. And I'm going to move a little bit quicker through this one right here. So this is for those of us that ideal is long gone, ideal is dead. Like ideal died, like it's gone, all right? And then when it tried to come back, you shot it with a shotgun. I mean, it's just gone, all right? You'll never be able to get back to it. And Paul says this for those of you that are in that situation, if possible, as far as it depends on you, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. If possible, it may not be possible. Let's just be honest. You know, this isn't a, if possible, as far as it depends on you, you know, what I'm trying to say here in a very non-elegant way is that it's not always up to us, and it may not be possible to restore a relationship. It may not even be advisable. But as far as it depends on you, and with that, as far as it depends on you means, what can you do to get out of the way and not create an obstacle for peace to be developed? Can you build your half of the bridge? Can you drop the material over on their job site so they can maybe build their half of the bridge over to you, and you've already built your half of the bridge? Are you the person that needs to, deal with some things and build your half of the bridge because you know someone is reaching out to you and you know someone's been reaching for you? But what can you do? And there is always a step that you can take as far as it depends on you. And you do this because of what Christ did for you. This is not about outcomes. It's about obedience. Because it's not, if possible, as far as it depends on you, do X, Y, Z so that you get this outcome. The outcome may never come. There may be zero fruit that comes from it. You may do all this work and build your half of the bridge and do all this stuff and drop the building materials off for them to build their half of the bridge and go above and beyond and deal with a bunch of stuff emotionally and grow and try and reach for that person that broke ideal for you, that person that hurt you, that person that has stained your life. And you may do all that stuff and they may still just look at you and turn you down and say no and go away. But if it was all about outcomes, if you needed the outcome, then you've made it about you. It's not about the outcome, it's about the obedience. Remember Jesus? God, take this cup from me. Then he says, not my will, but yours be done. It's obedience. And Paul is asking us to be obedient here. What if, speaking of outcomes and obedience, what if the goal is not reconciliation, but it's simply no more regret? What if that's the goal? To live a life where you don't carry and you stop carrying so much regret. Reconciliation may never come. It takes two. But you getting freed up from regret, that just takes you. See, don't miss this opportunity. I don't want you to miss the opportunity that you have here today. Don't miss this opportunity because it will clean out your heart. And it may unlock something in them that they could not unlock themselves. See, as far as it's possible to you is so much, it's for you, for the sake of you. Give yourself a chance to clean out your heart. Give yourself a chance to maybe it would unlock something in them that they couldn't unlock themselves. There's always, and as far as it depends on you, next step. And you know what? Some of you, this is where I push just a little bit. Some of you need to take that next step today. Some of you need it today, after church, because you've been holding on to it for so long and for far too long. And you're sitting in unnecessary hurt and unnecessary pain. Remember, the goal of this message today is not to heal your relationship. It's to give you freedom and to help you live with fewer regrets. Don't wait until you get to a place where you can't have a conversation that you should have had years ago. Don't find yourself in a waiting room or in an ER room or in a hospital wishing that you could have one more conversation that you should have had years ago that you never did, regardless of the outcome. Because it's for you, about you living with no regret and doing everything as far as it's possible to you to remove the obstacles of peace. Okay, I want to finish this today here with a lightning round here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to throw a bunch of things at you that I don't want you to miss. And this is just to help give you like next steps. Like, okay, what's my next step? I'm willing to say what's the next step for me here. So we've got a bunch of things here, and these are just short. These are quick things. But the first one, don't miss now. Don't be so caught up in what's coming in the future that you miss out on what's happening now. Don't be so future forward that you don't see what's happening now. I just use myself as an example. I could be so caught up on the future of this church that I miss all the good things that's happening now. How lame would that be? It'd be super lame. There's amazing things happening now. All right, don't miss your marriage. This is a big one here. Don't miss your marriage. Husbands, don't miss your wives. Wives, don't miss your husbands. Hey, you've got this one partner. I was going to say you only get one partner. You get one chance. But really what I'd like to say, because I believe in second chances. I believe in second marriages, third marriages, whatever. Don't give up trying to find that person and do it with Jesus and do it with Jesus in your life. But don't miss the marriage that you're in. Wives, give your husbands a break. Husbands, give your wives some love. Men want to be honored. Women want to be loved. Wives, honor your husband. Husbands, love your wife. Try that with each other. The sex will be great. Okay, some of you are just seeing who's awake, all right? All right, the next one, don't miss your children. Your children are gifts. They come to you as a gift. Don't miss out on what's happening there. Here's the thing with children here. There's only one person that can be dad for my kids, and that's me. There's only one person that can be mom for my kids, and that's my wife. Nobody else can do that. You know what? This church right here needs a lead pastor, and I get to do that, and that's amazing. But you know what? One day I'll be gone, and somebody else will do this. And then when the next person comes in to do it, no one will even remember who we are, and that's fine. So why would I miss out on a chance to do only what I can do with my kids so that I can do something that eventually one day someone else will end up doing anyway? That's what I want you to take away from this here, is that you are the only mom, you are the only dad that there is for your child. Be that person for them. Don't miss dinner. This is a quick one. It's not about the food, it's about the conversation. Show up, eat, love each other, talk nice to each other, share a high for the day, play the thankful game, show up and have dinner together. Create that connection there. Don't miss forgiveness. Don't hold. You know what happens when you don't forgive? You hold resentment and you hold bitterness. And that bitterness turns into resentment and it turns into hatred. And you become a brittle, weird, bitter, hatred-filled person. You're no fun to be around. Your husband doesn't want to be around you. Your wife doesn't want to be around you. Your kids don't want to be around you. All because you haven't forgiven. Stop carrying all this. As far as it is possible to you, work on getting rid of some of this. Don't substitute things for shared experiences. This is why money doesn't buy relationships. Guys, your wife wants time with you. She doesn't want another thing. She wants time. She'll probably be happy with another thing, but the time, the shared experiences, this is where the magic is here. That's why money can't buy happiness. That's why money can't buy love. That's why, things don't replace people. Because it's just shared experiences together. We want to give each other shared experiences. Hey, ladies, put some effort into it. Be attractive for your husbands. And what I mean by that is it may be okay to, take a shower, clean up a little bit here. I feel like I'm on thin ice here as I'm talking, but, pull me out of this, babe, You know what? I'll stand in this mess. I'm fine with that. We want to put effort into our relationship for each other. I want to put effort into my relationship with my wife. And she wants to put effort into it for me. So when we go out on a date night, I put pants on. She puts makeup on. How do we normally see each other? We're kind of a mess with the kids and everything like that. But on a date night, when she walks around the corner and she's wearing a shirt without stains and an outfit and jeans and beautiful makeup and stuff, I'm like, we're going out. This is awesome. Yeah, exactly. This is shared experiences. This is time and effort with each other. And you want to do anyway. Don't compare. That's the next one here. Don't get caught in the comparison trap. Comparing is a trap and you will never live up to it. I get caught in this all the time. You see kids that are just like, Jana, your kids are amazing, man. They're sitting there. My kids are probably peeling paint off the wall somewhere, or they're fighting with somebody, or they're outside in the mud. It's easy to be like, don't get caught in the comparison trap. Don't compare your marriage. Don't compare your kids. Don't compare your relationships. Just don't. It doesn't lead anybody to a good place. Don't keep score. That's a big one there. Everybody loves a scorekeeper. I just love when somebody reminds me of the number of times I fail at something every day, right? That's fantastic. That really makes me want to spend time with that person. No, the scorekeeper always loses relationally, always. Throw the clipboard away. Stop keeping score. Don't resist help. We need help. We need help with each other, especially men here. I find that women will go to each other for help. But men, we're stoic. We don't need help. We can resist. Well, here's the thing here. Men, you're not Superman. You're Batman. All right? And Batman needed Robin. And Batman needed Alfred. And Batman had the cave. And he had all the help. And that's us. All right? You need other people. And it's not just that we need people in our lives that we share interests with. You don't just need men who share your same interests. You need men who share the same values as you. You need men that are going to be raising kids with the same values that you're raising kids, because it is hard and it is difficult. Ladies, you need the same thing. Absolutely. Single moms trying to figure out how to do life, trying to figure out how to do it with kids. Well, you need somebody else that shares your values that you can do it with. Because when you feel like things are falling apart and things are messing up, to have that other person that's saying, actually, you're doing great, because you're sharing the same values with that person. Every hardship in our life is really just an invitation to find somebody that's like us and bring them into it, and then do it together. Don't miss your shot at reconciliation, because some of us, you only get one shot. You may only get one shot. And again, this isn't about you receiving freedom. It's not about you receiving something from the other person. But wouldn't it just be horrible to get to a place where you think, at the end of the day, at the end of time, in the hospital, you think, what if I had just done this? Could this have been different? It may never happen, but don't miss out on your role in creating the opportunity. Kyle, next slide for us here. It may never happen, but don't miss out on your role in creating the next opportunity here. Okay, so don't miss what's next. That's the next one here. We don't want to miss what's next. And here's what we don't want to miss about what's next is, our relationships can feel like, there's a lot of pain that we're carrying, right? Have you guys ever heard the saying beauty for ashes? You know how to trade your ashes for beauty? You know how to find that in life? Well, when ideal is dead in your world and you never be able to get back to it, and it may be, you have all this hurt, this pain, find somebody that's younger than you that's about to go through it or about to walk through it. Find a kid that's growing up in a destroyed family environment and invest in that person. Turn your beauty into ashes. Turn your ashes into beauty. Take what was so hard and so hurtful for you and go find somebody that will never have a chance at navigating that on their own. And help them navigate that. Because even when you're messed up and even when you're damaged, you're still valuable to somebody. God can use anybody. And He just needs somebody that'll say, well, what's the next step for me? Don't let grief and sorrow rob you of what you have to do. Don't let that happen. And then the last one that I have for us here, I'm going to pray and then we'll dismiss here today. But I hope, or my takeaway that I hope that you walk away from this message with today is that, hey, coming to church in the rain is fun. The coffee's free. It's great when we can, be this way with each other. But like that same Jesus that saved that woman from death, it's the same Jesus that chose you and me and us. And we pick our families, to an extent. We pick who we marry and we pick who we, partner up with and all of those things. And Jesus gives us that opportunity to do that, but He delights in us being in relationship with each other. And it's life that gets in there and kind of spoils things. Life happens. People get hurt because people aren't perfect people. And when people hurt people, it just compounds over and over and over and over again. But whether you can still obtain ideal or whether you're stuck way deep in the real, there is still so much beauty for you. And there's still so much good coming your direction. And there's still so much good that you can do. It's never too late to take another step. So I want to